This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Today on CityCast Madison. It's the Friday News Roundup. This week, I'm joined by CityCast Madison's Phil Surkis. A recap on the latest surrounding the 3 shootings over this past weekend. Madison was named the 2nd safest city in the U.S. for walking. And Dane County is looking for your nominations for new historical markers, specifically those recognizing underrepresented groups. It's Friday, June 14th. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Welcome to the Friday News Roundup. This past week, we've seen a lot of commotion in our hamlet, both quite positive with celebrations and fanfare, and some pretty tragic events, unfortunately. In a paradoxical fashion, Madison in the same week got both national recognition for our safety standards, and we also had multiple shootings, an abnormal amount. So we're going to get into it. But first, I want to anchor in gratitude because this is the way. I'm grateful to be here with you, our producer, Phil Surkis. How are you?
Hey, Bianca. I'm fine. I'm grateful to be here with you too. But my heart is a little heavy knowing what we're about to talk about.
Yeah, that's fair. Same. It's really tough news. And, it's the story we'll be kicking off the week with is the news of these 3 shootings that happened in Madison over the weekend. It was 3 separate incidents, one on each day of the weekend. One person was killed on Friday morning. Then there was a mass shooting at an apartment building not too far from State Street on Saturday night. And then another shooting on Sunday on the east side. So one person killed and over more than a dozen others have been injured. At this point, Madison Police Chief Sean Bard said the department doesn't believe that any of the 3 shootings are linked or related at this time. And as of this recording, no one's been arrested in any of the 3 incidents. So they are working on solving the cases. They're talking with victims and witnesses and reviewing digital evidence. It's been a busy all-hands-on-deck week for the Madison Police Department, surely. As civilians, it's an emotional thing. Let's be honest. I feel like, as you said, you have a heavy heart, Phil. The whole situation has stirred up a lot of emotions naturally. Shootings are always do that. But I think in Madison, it's a particularly strange feeling knowing that this is not so common, having these events, all 3 of them together like this. And especially this year, it's not evidence of what we've seen this year. In fact, I saw a WPR report and the mayor saying had been 5 weeks prior to these shootings that one shooting was reported. Mm-hmm. So, this is a cluster, and it shines a light on something that Madison Police Chief Barnes said, that Madison, as lovely as a city as it is, we are not immune to these shootings. He said, we're not special in that we have just as much access to guns as everyone else. So, Phil, you just moved here earlier this year.
I did.
And summer has just kicked off. Officially, it's next week, but we're in summer. I'm sorry that you're seeing this. Like, how are you feeling?
It feels very strange. I did just move to Madison from Oakland, California, which this kind of thing, and even in the neighborhood I was living, is very common. Where I lived, there have been gun battles on my block. There's been shootings. I live near a hotspot. And it's always been a very complicated and frightening problem. After years, kind of frayed my nervous system. And when the first of these shootings happened, we had a friend visiting from the Bay Area. And I saw the news and I was kind of in shock because this friend had just been commenting that it's been so fun to walk around Madison at night. It feels so safe. Then this happened. And it just made me feel like I guess this is kind of happening everywhere. You know, the same problems are happening in cities of small to medium cities everywhere. So it was shocking to just have the second one happen so close after the first shooting. I was going to ask you, I'll ask you right now. So this isn't normal here, is it? This is not the way it has been.
No, I wouldn't say it is. And I personally can't think of, in recent memory, any mass shootings that have happened. And we're going to get into the details of those. But like you, I think we've talked about this, Phil. When I lived out in DC, I was also in, I don't know if it was considered, identified as a hot spot, but more than on multiple occasions, there were gunshots outside of my window. I had dropped to the floor, like the sort of impact that has on your nervous system is huge. And to have 3 incidents, one after the other,
right.
It is really hard. And I think Madison works really hard to be a safe place. And it feels, kind of like a paradigm shake, kind of, is this us? Well, let's talk about what happened. All of us, hopefully this isn't us. And there are things that MPD has talked about, hopefully how we can try and reduce gun violence. I know the Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway, she called for common sense gun measures and, let's come together and stop these cycles of violence that create these situations, because obviously they are here. And what was a month or so ago, we all had the experience of the Mount Horeb school shooting. No one is immune, so being smart about all of this is going to be really key. But let's talk about what happened, right? So the biggest shooting, or the shooting that had the most injuries, the shooting that happened at the high-rise Lux apartment building, which is near the University UW-Madison's campus. I would say, to me, it feels like it's on the campus. UW said that there were no UW students identified in this group, but there was a party happening at the Lux, a rooftop party with about 25 people, and it said that 10 people were injured by gunshot wounds or grazes, and a couple of people were hurt by glass or trying to flee the scene. That's horrible. That's terrifying. Kind of think about crowd control and sort of when something goes down and people are running. I think I saw reporting of people went and, hid in this sort of closets and, trying to get safe. As far as since we are talking, nobody's been arrested for the shooting, and they're still trying to figure out who's responsible. Really strangely, or even more upsetting, the victims at this party, the age ranges are from 14 to 23, and some were high school students, which police chief said that is something that's worried him the most now, is that they're seeing juvenile crime, which he said they haven't traditionally seen that this year. The idea that this is a bunch of kids and even high school students who were victims, it's very disturbing, for sure.
It feels like just last week we were talking about the Mount Horeb story. And this just, it feels a little too close.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And I know that the city of Madison, there have been efforts to remove guns from our environment, where in places and hands that they shouldn't be. And obviously that work needs to continue because there are people with guns that are willing to use them in violent manners. So here we are, so that was the really big shooting. And, I just want to kind of touch on the other shootings that happened. So Saturday was the mass shooting. We talked about what happened Friday morning, which is the first one. I was driving and told you and Haley about it. I was like, oh, I can't drive down Williamson Street. I was on the phone with you guys as I saw everything stanchioned off. Right. It turned out, Friday morning was the result of an incident at Crystal Corner Bar late Thursday night. And in the early, morning, a 27-year-old man was shot and killed outside of the Willie Street Tavern. So, and officers got to the scene at 1:30 and he was injured, but, despite trying to save his life, he passed away. And police apparently recovered more than 40 shell casings after the shooting near the intersection of Williamson and Baldwin. So this is the shooting that they assumed to be targeted. And then on Sunday evening, there was a drive-by shooting on the east side where 2 people were injured, one critically so. And there were no deaths there, But the incident report for the crime said callers heard as many as 20 shots and that nearby vehicles were also damaged. So no bueno. This is all horrible news. You might have already heard and been able to read about some of this in our newsletter, Madison Minutes, because we were covering this story as well. And it's a place you can go to our website and catch up on that.
Yeah, it's very unnerving. We had our out-of-town guest, and we had dinner that evening at Mickey's right in that same area. And we were walking around Willie Street that evening.
Yeah. And I ate at Willoughby's on Saturday, and, they're all shaken too, talking about the casings that were found. And yeah, it's not great. So, of course, in moments like these, what can be done is the next thought. Okay, the Madison Police Department does have tactics in place to try and lower the number of adults here impacted by gun violence. I saw a quote. The number one thing that they're working on is each district captain has a plan and identified area where they're going to go out and do community outreach. So they're increasing patrols. They said, we established a couple of years ago when I first got here a gang neighborhood crime abatement team. This is, the police chief talking about tactics. So that is some of the ways they're working on the ground to kind of build community involvement and outreach around safety. But I think there's continued discussion about how we handle this as a society, as a community, what we want and what's possible. I can't help but think about all of the mental health struggles that our nation, our communities face, and having those conversations and resources and just looking at the roots of violence and actually addressing them with appropriate resources.
Well, I think that community engagement is definitely extremely important to know who's in the community. And as you made a reference to, not ignoring the challenges it is just to live in our society day to day. And it's hard for a lot of people. I'm of the mind, after living in the Bay Area, it seems like if people want to acquire a gun, it seems like no matter what laws they have in place, they can acquire a gun. I don't know how that happens. I don't have a gun myself, but I have heard many positive stories about community engagement where you're just getting to know the people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was one of the things I saw. It was in an article about, sort of tactics. And I think officers are going into schools and doing that community outreach, but it's going to take much more than that. I do want to note before we move on, if you or anyone has video of the incidents, the Madison Police Department is asking for information. Please contact the department. And then you can also contact Madison Area Crime Stoppers, and we'll put that phone number into our show notes, as well as online at p3tips.com. So, yes. Shall we move on from the horrendous and turn to the glorious, stupendous?
We shall, but I think we need a little break before we do so.
Yeah, I think you're right.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Okay, Phil with the good word. Take it from me.
Oh my goodness. It wasn't all bad. In fact, so much is good. And this show is just making me think of something that I sometimes think to myself. Life can be beautiful and ugly all at the same time.
So true.
Something beautiful has happened, though. Madison was named second safest city for pedestrians out of the largest 101 metro areas across the United States. Now, this was according to Smart Growth America and the National Complete Streets Coalition's Dangerous by Design report of 2024. That was a lot of words. What does it mean? It means that this report was created to highlight the number of traffic fatalities and injuries nationally. And they really wanted to identify the top 20 deadliest metros for people walking. And I took a look at this report. I wanted to know who created this. So the National Complete Streets Coalition, a program of Smart Growth America, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan alliance of public interest organizations and transportation professionals committed to the development and implementation of complete streets policies and practices. This report was also done with the cooperation of the CDC, who I think who's a big fan of people getting out and walking. So it's in their interest.
Walking is one of the best things for you, period.
Totally. And we're going to get to the good news very shortly, but we want to share some of the stats found in this report, which took a survey and took stats between 2010 and 2022. And between those years, it showed a 75% increase in the deaths of people walking since they started in 2010. In 2022, the number rose to 7,522. This is for the whole entire country, marking a 40-year high from the stats that they were able to get. And the report points out that Black Americans are killed at double the rate of white Americans, which is likely in part because Black neighborhoods have more high-speed roads and lack of facilities for people walking.
Jeez Louise.
The coalition deemed the top 3 most deadly metro areas for pedestrians as Memphis, Tennessee, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Tucson, Arizona. No shade on these towns. These are lovely, beautiful cities. It's just like the traffic situation is a clash of cultures. So they're working on it.
And their transportation planning.
Yes. Here's some good news. At the bottom of this list that you do not want to be at the top of, at number 100 was Madison.
Hey!
Yay, Madison. The only safer metro area in this survey was Provo, Utah. So congratulations, Madison. You are definitely doing something right.
Yes.
And I just want to say that moving here, I'm really shocked to find Madison is coming up high on so many surveys and so many lists for livability, for pedestrian safety now, for bike friendliness. And that's key in this because we're talking about this mixture of walking culture, biking culture, and car culture. And for so many cities, they don't play together nicely.
Yeah. It's because of the city's efforts with the Vision Zero initiative, specifically to try and, prioritize unprotected users, because the automobile has taken control of the American mindset. In fact, we're going to be talking to the director of transportation, Tom Lynch, on the show in the coming weeks. I actually just had a chance to chat with him, and he told me all about it. He even gave me a presentation, thank you, Tom, about the city of Madison and also automobile deaths and the sort of efforts that they've been taking. And it's been tremendous. Obviously, it's paying off.
It is. Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway was very pleased with this information, and she said, quote, "I am proud to say that we are among the safest cities for pedestrians. However, we still have more work to do. Our efforts to make Madison the safest city to walk, bike, drive will not stop until we reach 0 deaths in our city streets. So our team will continue to work hard to provide safe travel for all." So I'm so excited about the upcoming interview because he can really speak to this very thing. It's great timing.
Yeah. And I mean, the speed, thinking about speed is a major issue and component to all of this. And as any of you who drive in Madison or have seen, there have been efforts to lower speed limits, to try and protect human life. And, not just pedestrians, but bikers for sure. I've been talking a lot about Madison's biking community. And anyone who's been around, on First and East Washington, you might have seen the ghost bike. There are ghost bikes around Madison. It's a white bike that's painted. And it's a marker of someone who's passed away from a traffic, fatality. So yeah, definitely stoked to hear. We're really, making sort of walkability and living life out in the streets for humans, not just metal monsters, a priority.
So that is good news about Madison being safe in that respect. One more little bit of good news before we end today's show. I saw that Channel 3000 recently reported that Dane County is seeking nominations for Underrepresented Communities Historical Markers Program. Now, this is really cool. What are historical markers? They're those like gold and brown metal plaques that like your friend is like, hey, why aren't they up with us? Because they're back there reading about something that happened in 1903.
Right. They're like, I'll be 1 second.
However, this is so cool. Dane County wants to are seeking nominations to come from the African American, Latin American, Asian American, Indigenous American, and LGBTQ plus communities to say, hey, what should be commemorated? We want you to know. They have a survey and a form. We'll drop the link in our show notes where you can go in and say something happened important here. You need to honor this person. Not only that, one other thing I want to say, they say in their survey, it could be something that happened 100 years ago or something that happened 2 weeks ago. So that being said, if something cool happened last month and you want to have that commemorated in a heavy gold and brown plaque that sits in a park, this is your opportunity.
I love it. I can't love this news enough. Go Dane County. I appreciate it. Yeah. I saw that one of the senior planners with the department, Brian Standing, said, all these folks have been in Dane County for a long time. In the case of Ho Chunk, going back 12,000 years. And they're not represented very well in our historical markers that we have around the county. Truth that. True be that.
True.
Truth speaking. So this is an opportunity to enrichen our landscape, our historical landscape, and help tell other stories. Because we know that history sometimes favors some people over others. So, and they also said like specifically, like Madison's got a lot of them, but like if you're like a little bit out or if you know other places across Dane County, I think that they're like really looking for some opportunities to like hit the whole county. So get the story in.
Props to Dane County Department of Planning and Development for wanting to be on the right side of history. Very cool.
So cool. And speaking about history, do you want to help us make history? Because y'all already have started. You guys nominated us for Best of Madison. Once again, we're so thrilled. Last year, you voted us Madison's Best Podcast. And we are up once more for Madison Magazine's Best of Madison Award. So right now is a time... Woo! It's the time for voting. It's the final round for voting, and we would love it if you would take the time. We're up for Madison's Best Local Podcast, and our newsletter, Madison Minutes, is up for Best Local News Website. Will you help us make history? Help us take home the gold one more time? If so... Come
on. We're family. Let's do this.
We will drop a link to the voting in our show notes. If you could take the minute, we'd appreciate it. All right, Phil Surkis, thanks for rounding up the news with me this week.
My pleasure.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, your host. We're produced by Phil Surkis, Elizabeth Kama, and Joyce Tang. Haley Sperling is our executive producer. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. Ava Wojnowski and Adrian Gonzalez wrote this week's newsletter. Remember, you can always get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to Madison Minutes. And hey, if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with our city's transportation director, Tom Lynch? See you back here Monday morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, please take good care.